This is IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
White flag is in the hands of Paul Blevins. He's waiting to see Alexander Rossi come out of turn number 4. Tom Hansing is in the stand with him, and there he goes. And Danny, he may be out of fuel. Frankie very slow in turn 1.
He is indeed. It doesn't sound like he's underpowered. Left side wheels below the white line. Now with the short chute, now in turn 2. He may be done.
That car rolls through turn number 2, and it is under power. He is backing down big time. Here comes Carlos Munoz and Joseph Newgarden. They're running second and third. Jake Query Rossi's still the leader, but he's back the pace down.
Alexander Rossi, the rookie out of California, is backing up the pace. Carlos Munoz charging. Alexander Rossi into turn number 4 on fumes.
Alexander Rossi for the final time exits turn number 4. Here he comes for James.
He may have to coast it across the finish line. Alexander Rossi almost rolling to a dead stop. Twin checkers are out, and the rookie will win the 100th Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Stay tuned for more on IndyCar Radio.
The gateway to the win.
IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
The white flag is waved. 1 to go for Jacques Villeneuve. He's on his final lap, Jerry.
About 4 seconds is the lead time that he has. Can it hang together for another couple of miles? Oh, this is going to be great finish for Jacques Villeneuve into the number 2 turn.
And Villeneuve smoothly through 2, well off the wall, keeping a fine line down the back straightaway. Larry Henry.
Jacques Villeneuve bringing it down the back straightaway. No traffic in front of him. Cleanly down to the white line. The crowd on the beach cheering Jacques Villeneuve. 1 more turn to go.
Jacques Villeneuve's crew, they won the pit stop competition, but this is even better. Through 4 smoothly. Jacques Villeneuve heads to the checkered flag, and here's Bob Jenkins.
The checkered flag is waving, and Jacques Villeneuve wins the 1995 Indianapolis 500.
Stay tuned for more on IndyCar Radio. IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
It will be, Jake Query, one of the most popular wins that we have seen in many years here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Tony Kanaan is going to win the 500-mile race.
Dario Franchitti has gotten out of his car. Dario Franchitti, if you were to ask him, would tell you that his greatest friend in this race, without question, is the man who right now sits behind the pace car negotiating turn number 2. Both hands still on the wheel on that hydroxy-cut machine, but the hands of everyone inside this oval and on the outside of it in the air right now. Mark, that's because Dario Franchitti just watched his good friend go past. He's a half a lap away under caution from winning the Indy 500, Mark. What a popular one it will be.
2004 Series champions completed every lap in an unbelievable season. 261 starts, 107 top 5s, 168 top 10s. He's led over 3,200 laps, including over 200 in Indianapolis. Chris Denari, he's going to fill that glaring hole in his resume.
His countryman and friend Elio Castroneves has won this race 3 times. The first one is always the sweetest. He's behind the pace car in turn 4 by King. Here comes Tony Kanaan.
TK has wanted this race oh so bad. The crowd will come to its feet and will salute the man from Brazil who will finally fulfill his dream. For Tony Kanaan, the 12th time is the charm at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The Twin Checkers way. TK has won the 2013 500. Let's go to Nick Gilman.
And I'll tell you what, Mike, there is not a dry eye down in this pit lane.
from the Sonoma Raceway in Sonoma, California, this is the Verizon IndyCar Series on the Advance Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network.
Where has the time gone? Believe it or not, it's time for the season finale for the Verizon IndyCar Series. Welcome to Sonoma. I'm Mark Janes, and we are ready to decide a championship. And it is far from decided, most assuredly. Happy to be joined in the broadcast booth by Jake Query. And Jake, I don't know that we could have scripted it any better way back when we started this season in St. Petersburg, but still plenty of drivers with more than a mathematical shot, if you will. As I've said before, I think sometimes when you start hearing people reference to someone who has a mathematical chance, their chances aren't real good. But in terms of guys that are certainly well within striking distance, it promises to be a very, very compelling weekend. And I think practice and qualifying will all figure prominently into that process as much, if not more, than they ever have.
7 drivers, Mark, to your point, still mathematically alive for the championship. It would be all 4 that drive for Roger Penske. That would be Simon Pagenaud, Joseph Newgarden, Elio Castroneves, and Will Power. Then Scott Dixon, Alexander Rossi, and Graham Rahal. Those are the drivers that mathematically, numerically, still are in the hunt. Realistically, I think that on paper you look at it and you say that it essentially is a 2-horse race, that between Scott Dixon and Joseph Newgarden. I would not rule out, obviously, those others from the Penske stable by any stretch of the imagination. But what we have seen is really 2 different ways that you can put yourself in contention for the points. The first being that of Joseph Newgarden, which is a series where you are compiling wins, where you get on a hot streak, and the other, Scott Dixon, who has been a model of consistency, and maybe on weekends where he doesn't have the best race car, so to speak, Mark, still is able to go out and get the best out of what his car is able to provide for him. And that is why Scott Dixon now, no, not at all. And that's why he finds himself in position. Sonoma, a tricky race course, and we can see already Connor Daly going ahead and taking advantage of each and every aspect of the curbing here. So, too, as we take a look at Max Chilton, drivers doing that. So just getting underway here, Mark, in what should be a great weekend. Well,
and you talk about how challenging this place is. The elevation changes here are very pronounced, and, they provide a challenge for the drivers and the guys setting it up. 80-some-odd feet, Jake, in elevation from the exit of the carousel off of turn number 6 up to turn number 7. And then, of course, that same amount back down through the S's. A good portion of that is what you call. But perhaps I think the biggest challenge is a little over 3 degrees of banking to make up turn 1. The elevation's at 16 feet of the main straightaway. And, Jake, by the time they reach 3 and 3A, they've risen up to 135 to 153 feet. That's incredible.
And then, it's funny, the season itself, Mark, you talked about just the length and the overall stretch of the season. It reminds me when they go down that carousel. Now, for the folks that are listening and are not seeing what we're talking about, it's essentially a long spiral. They get to the top of a hill and then just take a long, winding, left-handed turn that goes down and has the elevation change as you work your way downward. You would think, obviously, that you're dealing with a lot of inertia or energy of the car that wants to continue to go right. You've got to bend that wheel to the left. It reminds me of, even though it's the opposite direction to the right, what they do at Barber Motorsports Park earlier in the season. So it's not completely foreign territory. They have some elevation changes at Watkins Glen, where we just were as well. But this one is absolutely, I think, is probably as tricky as any. There are also some fairly blind corners here where you better make sure that you're hitting your marks, because if you make a mistake, you might catch yourself getting hung out, and all of a sudden a surprise awaits in front of you.
If you have been here, as we have now for a number of years, you quite frankly get spoiled and accustomed all at the same time to these beautiful weather conditions. A picture-perfect day greeted us this morning as we arrived here at Sonoma, and just to reaffirm how nice it is, let's welcome in one of our pit reporters for this session. Good morning, Nick Yeoman.
Good morning, Mark Janes. It is. It's picture perfect. In fact, I joked with Sonoma track president Steve Page a couple weeks ago when I talked to him previewing this race. I said, it's really hard to predict who's going to win this championship, but one thing that we can definitely predict is that the weather is going to be perfect. It seemingly always is. We make our way out to Northern California here in the last several years to crown the Verizon IndyCar Series championship. Right now, things starting to warm up. 64 degrees, the ambient temperatures. A lot of crew members down here with jackets on. They're going to shed those as this day continues to warm up. Track temperature picking up quite a bit as well. Just about an hour ago, it was up around 76 degrees. Now, track temperature is up around 80 degrees. So, picture perfect for this first practice session. Keep in mind, a lot of these teams got to turn a lot of laps yesterday, Mark and Jake. Had 2 separate test sessions. The second one, the drivers turned over 800 combined laps. So, it is a weekend where there is plenty of time to work on these setups. If you're a new driver like Zachary Clayman DeMello, who's out there right now making his IndyCar debut, a lot of opportunities to get up to speed. And the good news is it is picture perfect as we are going to enjoy a great weekend here in Northern California to crown the 2017 Verizon IndyCar champ.
Nick, look forward to the work throughout the course of the weekend. Of course, he'll be high atop the course up in turn number 7. We'll call the action from there and throughout the course of the weekend and certainly on Sunday. Simon Pagenaud, talk about that open test yesterday. Defending series champion, race winner from a year ago, turned this course at 1:16.65.11. Castro Neves, Power Bourdais, and Rossi the top 5. Dixon, Hunter-Reay, Graham Rahal, Joseph Newgarden, and Marco Andretti, the top 10. Happy to have in a broadcast booth with us. Joins us as a pit reporter when the schedule permits throughout the course of the season. Primarily covers sports cars, but what a dream season it's been for him. He had the opportunity to go to Le Mans earlier this year. We're happy to have him with us in Sonoma this weekend. Let's welcome Ryan Marine. Ryan, let's talk about your schedule and what's on the docket for you this weekend.
A lot of coverage, as you said, of sports car racing for Sports Car 365 this weekend. I'll be talking with a lot of the Pro Rally World Challenge competitors throughout the course of the weekend. It's championship weekend for them, too. So plenty of drama on tap for the fans who make their way out to Sonoma Raceway this weekend.
We'll get your thoughts and impressions on this Verizon IndyCar Series championship as it unfolds. Speaking of that, one of the guys whose team is prominently involved is Tim Cindric of Penske Racing. We welcome in Dave First, who's caught up with Tim Cindric this morning. Hello, Dave.
Good morning. Depending on where you are, perhaps good afternoon. Here with Tim Cindric, president, of course, of Team Penske, and helps call the shots for the number 2 of Joseph Newgarden, as you see and hear, perhaps, here on the radio network. Takuma Sato beginning to take some laps here at Sonoma. Welcome back. Kind of the same old story. Here you are vying for another championship at Sonoma.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't want it any other way. Maybe this double points thing will work in our benefit at some point in time. But yeah, it's good to come here with three guys realistically that have a really good shot at it, and it'll be a great battle on Sunday.
How do you guys approach this? When I say you guys, specifically Joseph here in the 2 car for you guys, is it basically win and you get the championship? Do you worry about points? How do you do this?
I think it's all of the above, and I think you have to think on your feet a bit, and a lot of it has to do with how tomorrow starts. In other words,
qualifying's huge here, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure, qualifying, and then as you've seen in years past, where you think you've qualified well and are in a good position, and then you get the full course caution that mixes it all up. So I think you have to be ready for almost anything.
A couple weeks ago, it was a tough outing at Watkins Glen. Didn't get the finish you guys needed. You lost a lot of points. Well, how do you guys bounce back from something like that?
I think throughout the year you go through the up and downs, and we got here as a team, and we'll race here as a team. And for last week or whatever, the best thing out of it was we still control our own destiny. We still have the points lead, so if we can win the race, it doesn't really matter what everybody else does. So that's kind of the way you want it.
Here's the thing, perhaps it's a little coincidence. You look to your left, you've got Scott Dixon pitted right next to you guys. So you're going to have an opportunity to keep a close eye on what the 9's doing this weekend.
Yeah, we can't hide from each other regardless of where we are in the pit lane, so it is what it is.
Have a great weekend. It's great to be part of a championship. Certainly you would expect that, though, being a member of Team Penske, don't you?
Well, I think, you have to thrive on the expectations, and it's never enough, but you certainly want to be in a position where you have 4 guys that are vying for the title. You can't ask for anything more.
Good luck this weekend, Tim.
Thank you.
Tim, Tim Cindric, president here at Team Penske, guys.
Others starting to take laps. Takuma Sato, you heard Dave first reference that a few moments ago, and also Nick Yeoman and Zachary Clayman DeMello. Jacob, always neat to see somebody get the opportunity in the Verizon IndyCar Series. Clayman DeMello for Rahal Letterman Racing, a green livery, a mint green lime, light lime green, whatever you want to call it. I think seafoam is a phrase that they use now to describe that color, but number 13 this weekend, and a huge opportunity for this young man. A lot of people in the paddock awfully impressed and feel like that this could be just the beginning of a really solid career for Zachary Clayman DeMello in the Verizon IndyCar Series.
Spending a lot of time at Bath and Body Works, are you, Mark?
That's right.
That's
right. I'm comfortable with that.
Zachary Clayman DeMello, look, Road America was where really kind of his coming out party in terms of getting that win this year in Indy Lights. He was competitive over the course of the season, but Road America is another one that when you talk about great road courses, one that has some elevation change, not necessarily like what we see here in Sonoma, but Zachary Clayman DeMello was very impressive there and obviously has been able to work his way into getting this opportunity with Rahal. Now, we know next year that there will be a two-car team with Graham Rahal, and even though I don't believe it's been made official just yet, it is Takuma Sato will be teaming with Graham Rahal. So this is an opportunity for him, one would think, Mark, not just to perhaps catch the eye of Bobby Rahal and show what he can do, but really for all teams in the Verizon IndyCar Series. And this is a series that when you talk about the Mazda Road to Indy, as you take a look and you're watching on board now, that's the 26 machine of Takuma Sato working his way around. We just talked about him and the fact that the Indianapolis 500 winner could be, and I'm not sure, Mark, if that's been officially announced, but I mean, we know that he's going to be driving presumably for Bobby Rahal next year. But that said, look at the Mazda Road to Indy and some of the graduates now that we've seen it. This week alone, 2 drivers confirmed for full-time rides next year, one of them being Spencer Pigot, now will be a full-time driver for Ed Carpenter Racing next season. And then Zach Veach getting an opportunity for multiple years with Andretti Autosport, which is the team that originally gave him his opportunity as he came up through. One of the guys who, a lot like those 2 young drivers that would like to have long-standing careers in the Verizon IndyCar Series, one of them has been doing exactly that, not in the cockpit, but simply trying to get the cars to go as fast as possible, and he is on pit road with Nick Yeoman.
Yeah, that, of course, is Kyle Moyer, who's got a long history here in the Verizon IndyCar Series, winning championships, winning races. All right, your driver, Simon Pagenaud, one of the drivers, one of the contenders very much in this title fight. You guys have been incredibly consistent, 12 top 5s and 16 races. Do you feel like, though, to win this championship this weekend, Kyle, that you guys have to step on the top step of the podium and win this race this weekend?
Yeah, we got to do what we did last year here. You know, we've been very consistent this year. The team's been really, really good. The one team's been really consistent, completing laps, good pit stops, good everything all year long. But, you know, now it's come down to this thing. We need 104 points if we have any chance in this. At the same time, you know, the car is really good. It was good yesterday. You know, Simon seems to be on it this weekend and feels comfortable at this track, which is a good thing, you know. So, you know, we got a shot at it.
That was my next question, because you guys were so good a year ago when you won the championship. The test session yesterday, obviously a couple practice sessions. Did everything translate from a year ago to today, and it was like rolling off the truck and rediscovering that same magic?
Well, I think some of it was there, but we, you know, as a team, we had a really, really good test here last week. We saved up our day knowing that this was going to come down to a championship, you know, at this last race. So fortunate enough, we saved one of our team test days and came here last week. I think that's put us ahead of everybody.
Final thing I want to ask you, of course, pit lane can be so crucial, especially in these championship deciding races. You guys, based on the subpar qualifying run a couple weeks ago at Watkins Glen, you're a little bit further down. A lot of those championship contenders are at pit out. Advantage or disadvantage being back here?
Disadvantage, especially in qualifying, because everybody's going to key off of us. You know, after yesterday, us being the quickest was a good thing, but at the same time, it's a bad thing. Everybody's going to look at you and try to do and cover you. So, you know, it's part of the deal. You know, we should have qualified better at Watkins Glen. We didn't. So, you know, we'll get through it okay.
All right, appreciate the time. That's Kyle Moyer on the pit box, the strategist for our defending series champion, Simon Pagenaud, who is very much in the fight, Mark. If he can win the race on Sunday, he just needs those 3 drivers ahead of him, Newgarden, Dixon, and Helio Castroneves, to finish right around 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So Simon Pagenaud very alive in the chance of going 2 for 2 in IndyCar championships for Roger Penske.
Again, Ryan Marine joins us in the booth. And, Ryan, I think the thing that's been interesting is that, you know, even when Joseph got hot, hot a few weeks ago. This season is, I think, unlike most in the fact that at one point it seemed like one driver got particularly hot and gained some separation, be it Pagano, Power, Dixon, whatever years it was they won the championship. Some guys got hot early and then kind of held on late to win it in years past. But I don't know that we've ever had, even though we have a couple of guys with multiple wins, I don't know that we've ever had the parity that we've seen this year. And I think that's what makes this weekend particularly compelling.
Your memory goes back a bit further than mine. That's not to age you or anything along those lines.
Nice having you with us, Ryan. Thanks for stopping by. We appreciate that.
But the fact is that certainly in my time of following the sport, I think you're right. And it's really the way it's been all season. No lead has felt safe. No deficit has seemed too large. We think about how the season started with Sebastian Bourdais going from last to first in St. Pete. That's just one race, but in a way it's a microcosm for the season. And without a doubt, there have been portions of the season that certain drivers maybe have dominated or come close to dominating, but never have we felt like there was a presumptive favorite. And I think coming into this final weekend, that's what's going to make this so much fun. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of uncertainty, and for a race fan or a sports fan in general, I mean, that's what you're looking for. You don't want to know how it's going to pan out before it all gets started, so I think we're in for a treat come Sunday.
Interesting to see some of the silly season announcements and how much earlier the silly season starts now. And Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, with the new packages coming on board for next year, I think teams, those that haven't made the announcements by now, will make them shortly after the conclusion of this race on Sunday so they can set about the task of getting their drivers and their teams comfortable with that equipment moving toward 2018.
I think you're right. The fact is it takes a little while to get acclimated to new equipment, so it would behoove the teams to try and get those driver lineups sorted out before the season started. It's kind of, well before the season starts, it's kind of interesting to see just how much that timeline has moved up. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were going into St. Pete, maybe a couple of weeks before, and we still didn't know who the driver lineups were going to be for several teams, and I don't think that's going to be the case this time around. So certainly an interesting development in IndyCar racing here in recent years, and I think it's probably a sign that the series has found some stability too.
Mark, when you look, as we look right now on board, if you're watching on the video boards here of Jack Harvey and now Scott Dixon in pit road, but a couple of the drivers we just saw, when you talk about the silly season, Mark, I don't know that 3 months ago we would have anticipated that either Max Chilton or Charlie Kimball would be central figures in that discussion, but certainly they are. Max Chilton had said at Watkins Glen that he was still open possibly even to going back to Europe. There's a lot of posturing that goes on at this point, but when you talk about the possibility of Carlin Racing starting a two-car team next season, one would think that would be obviously Max Chilton with his father's involvement with that team, and then Charlie Kimball possibly going with them. I mean, those are two guys, Mark, that are a couple of the dominoes that I think people are going to wait to see exactly where they go.
Yeah, it's going to be anxious. It's going to be interesting to see. We're anxious to see, rumored Tony Ganon to be headed to Foyt Racing, replacing Munoz, Daly. Perhaps both will be replaced, and on and on and on. Look like Elio might be headed elsewhere. Now all of a sudden there's talk that Penske may be back with 4 cars. If they do that, then in fact Elio would most likely stay. So the next couple of weeks, I think most, if not all of it, will be settled, I think, which I think is fascinating. Ryan, before we let you go, to let people know that you and I cover the gambit of sports, so we'll actually be together next Friday night in central Indiana. There's a Monrovia, California, but there's also a Monrovia, Indiana, and you'll be doing a webcast of high school football at the school where I work when I'm not doing this. So it's certainly the view outside of the press box there will be a little different than what we're enjoying here today, but enjoyable nonetheless.
Looking forward to it and appreciate the extension of the hospitality that you held out to me earlier. Look forward to getting out there and make my return to Monrovia. Haven't called a football game there since I was in college, so should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, good luck this weekend with all the activities you're involved with, and we look forward to having you with us again next year.
Pleasure is mine as always. Thank you.
Okay, Ryan Marine joins us here in the booth. We're about 20 minutes into this 45-minute session. Rossi goes to P1. Hunter Ray, Bourdais, Sato, Kimball, Munoz, Piggott, Chilton, Hildebrand, and DeMello 12 cars have now taken some time. Daly and Harvey have gone out as well. Scott Dixon just recently fired up, out on the course right now. Hasn't cleared the timing loop yet, but will continue to progress through this session when we come back in preparations for the season finale on Sunday here at Sonoma.
During the 1969 Indy 500, Mario Andretti's crew couldn't get his tire to come off, so he had no choice but to keep driving on it. That tire held up the whole race and took Mario to the winner's circle. Right, Mario?
That's right. If it wasn't for the dependability of Firestone tires, I wouldn't be an Indy 500 champion.
Here's to making more champions with the official tire of the Verizon IndyCar Series. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone.
Sonoma, preparation for Sunday's race. The GoPro Grand Prix of Sonoma. GoPro been involved for a couple of years now with the season finale, and we're excited to bring you all of the action throughout the course of this weekend in practice and qualifying. I'm Mark James. Jake Query joins me in the booth, and Jake, as this session progresses, business starts to pick up a little bit. A couple of drivers have taken full advantage of the time, most notably Connor Daly and, of course, Zachary Clayman DeMello making his debut with Ray Hall Letterman Racing. But again, because of the open test yesterday, teams could be a bit more judicious in terms of nailing down the setup as they get set to go qualifying tomorrow.
Mark, the thing that astounds me each time that I watch an onboard camera of a driver is how at that speed, I think we take for granted how fast these cars are going. And at that speed, how quickly the turns come, meaning that some tracks are a rhythm track to drivers. They just kind of get into a feel where there's a rhythm and you just kind of know automatically, okay, left, right, left. But the anticipation of what is upcoming, especially at a track like this where you can't necessarily see the corner, you have to anticipate exactly that, to me is just remarkable. And when you see just the hand movements, the way that the wheel sometimes challenges the driver to stay in control of the car at all times, I don't know necessarily that we ever fully understand, embrace, or respect the absolute physical nature along with the mental aspect of what goes through a track like this.
We see the 14 of Carlos Munoz exiting pit road. As we say that, just in front of him, Marco Andretti makes the left-hand turn into turn number 1. And again, this is where the balance of the car is really affected as he climbs the hill and sets up for that 2, 3, and 3A complex. We see Joseph Newgarden heading out. We see James Hinchcliffe into turn number 1. And again, that's a fairly short straightaway after they come off of that hairpin, which also serves as the entrance to pit road. And then they clear the hill in 3 and 3A and then set up for turn number 4. And then they come to a very technical portion of the race course. They come around turn 6, which is that carousel. Again, it's when they make that long climb up to turn number 7. And that is probably the best passing zone on the racetrack, as we see a long line of cars headed through there now, climbing on the binders. Newgarden among those, as we mentioned. Marco Andretti clears that portion of the course. We see Charlie Kimball up there along with James Hinchcliffe. There's the 19 of Ed Jones, who a year ago was in the booth with us talking about his future after he had just wrapped up an Indy Lights championship. We see Ed Jones making his way down through the S's. That's where he'll come into the view of Jake. Jake will actually call 2 or 3 different portions of the course. We see Tony Kanaan taking the short way around and jumping up over some curbing, stirring up some dust in the number 10. He's really flinging it around the racetrack. And Jake, this setup is pretty unique for you and Nick Yeoman, who will be stationed out on the course, because essentially once we throw it to you in turn 1 at the green flag, I typically will not get that back unless something happens down on this end of the course until turn 10. You and Nick kind of toss the ball around in the backyard, as we've referenced in the past.
Mark, I think this is the track where every year, along with Barber, but at this year it's probably more, or at this track, more applicable than anywhere else, I get to use my famous chutes and ladders analogy. But it's the easiest way to describe it when you watch, or when you look at the board game chutes and ladders from when you were a kid. I'm essentially looking at the entire board And as the field goes in and makes their way through turn number 1, they're at the top of the board, if you will. Then on the far right-hand side of it, which would be that 2-3 area, actually just out of 3A, they come into Nick's view. But then when they go around that carousel and work their way all the way down to the bottom of the playing board, if you will, then they come right down in front of me. So yes, indeed, we kind of go back and forth. Now, the trick and the challenge there, of course, is to make sure that we're clear as to which corner it is that we're calling at that particular time. But talk about rhythm racetracks, it becomes rhythm in terms of calling it, and it becomes an awful lot of fun in calling it, Mark. It is hard to believe it's the final weekend of the year. It's gone fast this year. Fortunately, it's been, for the most part, a safe year. Obviously, we had Sebastian Bourdais' incident in Indianapolis, but it's been a great racing season. And when you look at Joseph Newgarden, you look at Scott Dixon, you see guys that we anticipated being right up there towards the front, and knowing that one of them is going to become a champion this weekend is always cool.
Well, you talk about what a safe year it's been, and I think Scott Dixon's crash in Indianapolis and Sebastian Bourdais, 2 indications of just how very, very safe, in terms of safety innovations, this sport is. Accidents that could have ended drastically different if not for the combined efforts of the Hamatro safety team, the IndyCar medical staff, and of course the folks at Dallara and the IndyCar series with the design. You know, one of the things that is really becoming vogue this year, especially on IndyCar.com, which you should log on to throughout the course of each and every week, even during the off season. But man, this helmet cam, Jake, is just, I think it's one of the most widely received in terms of its popularity of anything that they've added to the website and added for fans in quite some time. I think people, it really allows you to essentially sit in the cockpit. And Jake, we were looking at James Hinchcliffe go around the course, and not only does it give you an idea of what it's like from the driver's perspective in terms of looking at the racetrack, but it really gives you a bird's eye view of just how intricate and technical the steering wheels are in these race cars.
Well, and that's the thing. The steering wheels at all times, you know, you can check your fuel pressure, you can check your tire pressure, you can check the temperature. There are all kinds of things going on that the drivers are able to find out in terms of information necessary or adjustments that can be discussed before they bring the car into pit road.
Day first, it's a good get on your part. Once upon a time, as Ryan Marine referenced 100 years ago when I first started covering the Verizon IndyCar series, I was a young pit reporter, and one of the guys that was always so very, very kind to me is a gentleman and a broadcaster, and those words certainly don't often go together. But you're welcoming Gary Gerald to Sonoma this morning, and we're happy that you're doing that.
Yeah, I'd say you get a bit jaded when you cover 17 races through the season. You see everybody on pit road. It's more of a high sometimes. It's a passing glance. Hey, good to see you again. And then I'm walking up pit road. I look over. Gary Gerald is here, ladies and gentlemen, and I stop in my tracks. It is an honor to see you once again, and welcoming us to your area, man. Great weather as always, Gary.
Oh, we love this place, and you love the wine country, and I know how excited teams are. I saw you down at AT&T Park doing the thing with the statues, the 5 guys for the Giants. Gaylord Perry, Willie McCovey, Willie Mays.
Orlando Serpeta. The reason I was doing it was on Twitter and TV is that Will Behrens does the sculptures of those giant, literally giant statues outside AT&T Park. Of course, he does the likenesses of the Borg Water Trophy as well. So there's all kinds of IndyCar connections. You just got to spot them and find them a little bit.
Well, that's the creative genius of day first. You're on top of all those things. I love it.
How are you doing?
I got no complaints. I'm just happy to be here. Another beautiful sunny day. You got a championship to be decided. I'm still trying to determine whether or not I like double points for the season ender, and I think I've come to the conclusion that I don't like double points. But what are you going to do?
I can tell you someone that doesn't like it is the guy that's leading the championship.
Yeah, Joseph Newgarden, huh? What do you got? 4 Penske's and Dixie, right? Right. Yeah. It's going to be crazy. I mean, it'll be fun. And one of the things about this racetrack, as you well know, you get a lot of sand that blows out on the track. You get trying to get legitimate, honest-to-goodness grip is a huge challenge. Tire wear is going to be essential. And a guy like Dixon, he's a master at, preserving in those situations. So I think you give him a little bit of an edge in that sense. But with double points, who knows? And it just takes one little screw up, and you're out of here, pal.
Do you just want my live pack now? I can go home?
Come on.
We miss seeing you every week, every year, too, Gary.
I really appreciate that. It's amazing to me, and the limited opportunities that I get to be around the IndyCar circuit, to see how many familiar faces there are, even after all the years that I've been away from it. But listen.
How many years has that been, Gary?
Well, the last year that I worked on a full-time basis was 2004. So we're talking over a dozen years, and that doesn't seem possible. But I spent a lot of years, as I think you know, trudging up and down these pits, and I absolutely loved it. I miss the people, and I just, I relish an opportunity on a day like this to get out here and see people like you. It's awesome.
Well, still, folks out here in this area, they recognize your voice, maybe not because of auto racing so much, but you're still very much a part of the Sacramento Kings broadcast. How many years is that going on strong now?
Well, I just, I'm going to toot my horn a little bit here. I just signed last night a new multi-year agreement with the Kings, and I'm excited. This will be my 33rd season coming up since they've been in Sacramento. So, and hard to believe, but training camp opens a week from Tuesday.
They moved up the schedule and everybody a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, just a little bit this year. And they're trying to make it a little bit easier during the course of the season. Not as many 4 and 5 nights, not as many back-to-backs, things like that. Got to protect these high-dollar athletes. You know how that goes.
How are the Kings going to be quickly this year?
Well, unprecedented, because we've got 10 guys, 10 out of your 15 that are on rookie contracts. 5 of them are honest-to-goodness rookies. 4 are second-year guys, and a third one, Willie Cauley-Stein, is in his 3rd year.
So it's going to be an interesting year, is what you're saying.
It'll be hard to win, but I really we finally have a sense of direction. We got some good pieces. It's going to be fun to watch.
All right, let me say this as I wrap things up here. You're one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, because you made it look so cool. So thank you for your leadership and kind of leading the way in that regard. So it's great to have you on here.
You're very, very kind, and I appreciate that. And by the way, you do a hell of a job.
I might record and make sure we get a tape of that. Hey, thanks a lot. Have a great weekend, Gary.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
The great Gary Gerald down here on Pit Road at Sonoma, Mark.
Yep, one of the best for sure, Dave First. That's good stuff. And always great to see Jerry. Again, a gentleman and an amazing talent, no question about it. Happy to have with us our good friend Tony DeZeno here in the broadcast booth. And Tony, let's focus on what we talked about a couple of weeks ago with some of the stories you broke about Andretti Autosport staying with Honda, and then Alexander Rossi re-upping with Napa, an expanded effort on their part. I think in terms of the quote-unquote silly season, we ain't seen nothing yet, huh?
No, Mark, and to follow Gary Gerald, I feel like one of those aforementioned rookies on the Kings trying to follow that up. He did a Phoenix event with Elio and TK earlier this year, and we talk about silly season. Elio and TK are 2 of the principals in the Andretti stuff. Now that those dominoes have officially fallen, we've gone from, okay, there might be some movement, to now all of a sudden, holy cow, here's all the movement within a 2 to 3 week period, to where we could theoretically come out of this weekend with maybe only a handful of seats still available, because Andretti's got all their 4 lined up, which is I think the earliest that they've done that, an all-American team there. We've talked already about the Foyt, Rahal, Ganassi scenarios. More to come. So it's been a fascinating week, and with this being the last race of the season, beyond the championship contenders, it's always that last chance to put kind of a statement weekend together. Guys are trying to make that last impression before it goes dark for a little while.
Surprised at all that Ed Carpenter went ahead and released the announcement, pulled the trigger on the decision to put Spencer Pigot in the car for Jared Hildebrand in 2018?
That's a tough one, because
I'm maybe not surprised about the announcement, but the timing.
The timing is a very, I don't want to call it peculiar, but it's unfortunate based on a number of circumstances that happened, this being J.R. Hildebrand's home race, and with there's also kind of the fear that if you hold it after this weekend, then it gets lost in the championship shuffle too. So we either go now to get it out and give Spencer that kind of vote of confidence going into the weekend. Remember, Pigot needs a good qualifying performance. He's still never made it out of Q1. For all his race pace and his outstanding ability to pass, he's not really shown that. So maybe they give him the announcement this early to try to give him, an extra booth going into the weekend. Hildebrand, he already wrote in his blog that he posted that, hey, I got to go focus too, get through this and we'll see what comes next.
Will this year be unlike those in years past in which we simply had drivers just changing seats, new faces, and same faces in different places, if you will? does this offseason, more than any in recent memory, be the one in which we finally start to see some new faces emerge, be it from other forms of racing or from the Mazda Road to Indy?
We're seeing that, and there's going to be a number of availabilities later today. So we've got Kyle Kaiser, who's won his Indy Lights Championship. He's got at least a 3-race program working on more. He may continue with Juncos and their step up, Juncos Racing. Zachary Clayman DeMello, who we've touched on, makes his IndyCar debut this weekend. Probably needs another year of Indy Lights. He's very fast, but a bit erratic. You never really know which one you're going to get throughout a race weekend. Zach Veach, we've touched on. And then you've got other guys. R.C. Enerson's here this weekend, trying to keep his name in the frame. There's other young guns that you want to see. Then there's outsiders. Brendan Hartley's name has been brought up. Honda likes him. He's a sports car veteran. He's won Le Mans. He's won sports car championships, but he's pretty much an unknown to this market. So there's not really been any formal conversation about him yet in the paddock. It's kind of been more hearsay and a bit of rumors. But if he arrives, he's got a lot of talent because he's very quick, and he would definitely take to these cars pretty quickly.
Maybe you overheard the conversation we had with Ryan Marine before you went on. We speculated, he and I did, are in agreement with the fact, and maybe it's just nothing more than having a firm grasp on the obvious. Perhaps the sense of urgency to get these seats filled and then get these decisions made is driven by the fact that boy, as soon as you get arrival on the new stuff, you want to make sure that everybody's in place and you can start the testing procedure and get yourself familiar with the new setup for 2018 as soon as possible.
Yeah, for sure, Mark. And one of the things that's going to be interesting is we've had the IndyCar-led testing so far. We've had 3 different tests of those. The 4th one is then scheduled for Sebring, and then it's going to move to manufacturer testing, so where Chevrolet and Honda can select the teams that will do the next round. So Ed Carpenter's going to have a bunch of tests later this fall going into the end of the year, and we'll see the Honda guys with testing as well, their teams to be determined. So teams need to lock guys down, and actually when Carpenter made the Piggott announcement, they were very important to note that, hey, he's going to be doing a lot of this, and this is going to give Spencer a real off season, not just this half and half that he's been doing the last couple of years, but now he's fully in.
Tony, let me ask you, what driver or drivers, and I hate to be negative Nancy here, but I'll take that route just because it's part of the silly season.
Sure.
What driver or drivers are perhaps the sands of the hourglass starting to run through in trying to find something for next year that maybe on the outside looking in, that maybe 6-8 months ago we never would have guessed would be in that position, if any?
Carlos Munoz. I think both of the Foyt guys are under a lot of pressure this weekend to perform because they know that there's now just one spot most likely that's going to be there for them next year. There was a difficult situation. Munoz has finished second in the
Tony Kanaan getting there.
Tony Kanaan is expected to go in there. So Munoz is a guy who's been second in the Indy 500 twice. He took a car that really had no business finishing 10th place this year, but he could be out on the job at 25. Hildebrand, this was his comeback year theoretically. Some of the other young guys, if Ed Jones doesn't have the budget to continue, if Jack Harvey doesn't have the budget to continue, guys are shopping, but do you have the full budget? Do you have a partial budget? So there's probably a good 7 or 8 guys in this field, at least a third, that they don't know what their future is after this weekend, and that's got to be a little unsettling for them.
Let's talk about this championship, break it down among we believe to be the 4 contenders or so, quite frankly. Joseph Newgarden, I think, winning this championship maybe vaults him up the ladder of stardom a little quicker.
I think so, to say the least.
But then again, not winning it puts him, kind of in company with Will Power in terms of a guy that, had the lead late and lost it. And we're not suggesting that pressure was the reason, but that happened to Will a couple of occasions before he won the championship. Pagenaud wants to defend it for sure. Elio Castroneves might be the sentimental favorite because his future may be in doubt with Penske Racing. He's never won a championship. But I think, Tony, at the end of the day, the last person I would want to have within striking distance of me in a championship, especially just a couple of points away, is Scott Dixon. Scott
Dixon is the most menacing, cool guy that you can ever deal with in any one circumstance. Joseph Newgarden hasn't been rattled by much, but he is prone to the occasional mistakes. One of the big challenges for guys when they're going for the championship is if it's their first chance at it, do they rise to that occasion or do they then wilt under the pressure? And you don't ordinarily see Newgarden make the type of mistakes that that he did at Watkins Glen. But Dixon has taken advantage of opportunities on days when you didn't think a result was there. A 10th at Toronto might not seem like something, but, between that, Iowa getting a 7th or 8th place with a car that Mid-Ohio where he finished 9th, those are points that you don't think about at that point, but can make a big difference down the road. And as you see with him being second in the last 2 races at Gateway and Watkins Glen, he is right there poised to steal another one from outside the Penske quartet.
Skill and some lady luck intervened, though, at Gateway, because we could have been talking about Joseph Newgarden in a far different light.
Oh, yes.
Had that contact with Simon Pagenaud going for the race win ended up differently, and it very easily could have.
Very well, and as it was a 25-point swing just in the one move, because you might have had Pagenaud up there, too. So there's been 3 or 4 moments this year, the Road America pass where Dixon got Newgarden, the Gateway pass that could have ended in the wall for both of them. I think Dixon probably would have been leading the points had there been contact, and actually both ended in the wall at that point. So it's been a year of big opportunities, and do you guys seize it, or do you wilt at the pressure at it?
Elio Castroneves just kicked up a little bit of dirt as you take a look at that number 3 Hitachi machine out on the track now, Ryan Hunter-Reay. Elio Castroneves, in your opinion, Tony, right now, if you had to pick it, it's leaning that he is going to be running where?
Until this weekend, I would have said sports cars for sure, but he's never been as enamored with the idea for 2018 as the team has been or as the rumors have been. And if what's written is to be believed this weekend, then there's more odds of him coming back here. The Andretti staying at Honda helps because Chevy needs more bullets in the gun. Chevy's other teams, quite frankly, haven't had the measure of Team Penske's success this year, and the manufacturer, Jim Campbell, I spoke to at Watkins Glen, said they can go to double-digit cars, but right now they're only at 7 or 8, so they need as many cars as they can get. With how well Elio's performing, I think there's more of a chance he's here now suddenly than I would have said 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Between the silly season and between the driver movement and the championship, it's kind of like Christmas for guys like you that have to throw something up there every day, huh?
You'd think it's the last race of the season and that it would end everything, but it's far from it, because we have obviously all the stuff to get decided this weekend, all the post follow, how things are going to shake out. And as Alexander Rossi joked with the rest of us yesterday, hey, what if I win a second race in a row? Well, that's going to change what you guys write for next year, saying, oh look, you're the new championship contender too. Technically he's still eligible, but he pretty much is out of it once the green flag falls on Sunday.
Well, let's remind folks where they can find all the great stuff that you write and where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. NBCsports.com/motors for all the web stuff, NBCSN for all the coverage, and on Twitter there's both an IndyCar and my own Tony Azzino Twitter accounts.
Well, it's a mutually beneficial relationship for sure. I mean, you even mixed like 3 or 4 of us into one of your stories a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
we appreciate that.
We've got some good synergy, man. Jake's been calling the Indy Lights races for us this year on the NBCSN shows, and I come up do the radio. It's like a baseball season where we do crosstown rivalries. So
it's a win-win. We appreciate it, Tony. Well done, and we look forward to your stuff, and certainly the coverage of the off-season. We'll all be together in St. Pete before we know it. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it, man.
Tony Azzino has been our guest in the booth. That practice continues. Just a few minutes left. We'll wrap it up when we come back to Sonoma.
You can't take a 700 horsepower IndyCar out on the road, but you can take the tires. The new Firehawk high-performance tires from Firestone are built with racing-inspired technology and have better wet and dry handling than ever before. Now the only thing missing is a pit crew.
Hi, Dad.
Well, that's a start. Find your perfect Firehawk performance tire at your local Firestone retailer. Whatever you drive a Firestone.
We'll watch the points leader, Joseph Newgarden, come down through the S's, work his way through turn number 9, setting up for 10, clears 10, now 11. And again, that's the worst of the course where they have the option to go straight ahead, get onto pit road, or stay in the throttle and go down the straightaway. That's exactly what Joseph decides to do. He makes that left-handed turn now as the car comes off of pit road. He climbs the hill, snakes his way through the right, sees the car wash up a little bit on him. Jake, there's no question this is one of those places where the drivers, we see a replay of Connor Daly now on the ragged edge. They are going to test it plenty. One of those that did that is Tony Kanaan. And Dave, they've all been here enough now that they know where and when and how they can test that curbing all the way around Sonoma.
They definitely know their way around Sonoma Raceway. 6 hours of practice yesterday and a 45-minute session here. Tony Kanaan, top 5. We'll see how that lands anywhere in the next couple of minutes when practice wraps up. Feel pretty good about things so far?
Yeah, I mean, still fighting a little bit of the car, but we had a good day yesterday. The track changes so much here. It's going to be a completely different beast this afternoon with the wind and the heat. So it's really every session it's a surprise here. So hard to know where we are.
We always hear about grip and the difficulty of finding grip at this particular place. Why is that?
I don't know. It's a combination of the wind. It would change in a matter of 10 minutes. It will do it 380 degrees, and all of a sudden, a corner that was good before, the previous lap is not good on the next lap. And with all the hills and the changing directions, that affects us a lot. So this track is definitely one of the most challenging tracks for grip. And once you think you have a good car and you're confident, then you come to the next session and that car is gone. So you're chasing the weather, you're chasing the track, which is it's kind of a guessing game.
Well, let me ask you this. If we were to believe everything we hear, this might be your last weekend with Chip Ganassi Racing. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty close to that. Obviously, we haven't finalized our deal yet, but I hear also a lot of rumors that somebody's replacing me on the 10 car. So obviously, I haven't picked up any talks with Chip, so I guess that's pretty much accurate, yeah.
How worried are you about that this weekend, or once you're in the car, hey, you gotta focus on what's at hand here?
I'm worried about giving this team and Chip and NTT Data one of their best races. We struggled this year quite a bit, so focus on the race. I mean, I've been around for a long time. This is not something that I can't worry about the future. I can't worry about things that I cannot control. I got to do a good job with It's a perfect weekend. All the sponsors are here. They love Sonoma. So
Dixon's going for a championship. I know you want to help him as well.
100%. He still has the NTT car as well. So to me, I'm focused on this weekend. And then Sunday afternoon and Monday morning, we start worrying about next year.
Good start to the weekend. Tony Kanaan, top 10. Is that accurate, Mark James? Maybe ninth quick in this practice?
He is ninth quick day first. That is correct. Joseph Newgarden draws the line of the proverbial sand, if you will. He is P1 at 1:16:39.50. Power, Pagano, Rossi, Bourdais, Dixon, Hunter-Reay, Castroneves, Kanaan, Andretti, the top 10. Ray Hall, 11th. Sato, 12th. Then Hinch, Hildebrand, Jones, and Piggott. Kimball, Chilton, Munoz, Harvey, Daly, and Zachary Clayman DeMello. 22 cars under this weekend, with Clayman DeMello piloting the 13 for Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. Jake Query, what do you make of just how red-hot Alexander Rossi has been to close out the season? I referenced it a couple of times at Watkins Glen. I think that young man is looking for some momentum for the offseason and could, I think, perhaps put himself in contention for a championship throughout 2018.
Certainly it's all come together for him. There's no doubt about that. And just feeling his way through. You know, there are some drivers, Mark, I always go back to the late, great Justin Wilson on this. I remember when he won at Texas and he joked that, I guess now I'm an oval specialist, huh? Because we have drivers that get labeled as a road and street course guy or an oval driver, but very rarely one that we say is somebody who has a real affinity for both. Alexander Rossi, obviously a guy that won his first race at Indianapolis, but came in because of his European background. We assumed road and streets were where he would be best. I think he has figured out, just in terms of the road courses in particular, finding his way through, finding the best line, feeling out the race car. Interesting, because when you think about the last two Indy 500 winners, Takuma Sato and Alexander Rossi, both of them, the Indianapolis 500 represented half of their career Verizon IndyCar Series wins, and both of them have arguably the most historic tracks on the other circuits that you would want. Takuma Sato with Long Beach, probably the most historic street course that the Verizon IndyCar Series goes. Alexander Rossi now with Watkins Glen, the most historic road course in which the series goes.
So, again, Newgarden, Power, Pagano, Rossi, Bourdais, the top 5. Then Dixon, Hunter-Reay, Castroneves, Kanaan, and Andretti, the top 10. Ray Hall, the 11th quick. Sato, Hinch, Hildebrand, and Jones. Piggott, Kimball, Chilton, Munoz, Harvey, Daly, and Zachary Clayman DeMello. To give you an idea of what this weekend will look like for us here on IndyCar Radio and IndyCar.com, practice session number 2 comes your way this afternoon at 2:15 Pacific. That's 5:15 Eastern. And that'll wrap it up for the day. Then IndyCar practice session number 1 tomorrow will be at 11 a.m. Pacific. That's 2 p.m. Eastern before we go qualifying from 3:30 to 4:45. And then on Sunday, a final warm-up session at 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. And then we'll have flag-to-flag coverage as a season finale That'll be at 3 p.m. So, Jake, can we put the pressure on you now? Do you feel comfortable making a pick for the championship among those that are most closely bunched together at the top?
Certainly the weekend is off to a good start for Joseph Newgarden. That said, I would never bet against Scott Dixon and Mike Hull and just their ability to, not to say that Newgarden can't do this, but I always just think that Scott Dixon is so calm and poised when sometimes others bunch up just a little bit. I think it's going to be tough to get, although the double points comes into play, and it's Newgarden's lead to lose. Hard to go against Dixon.
Let's find out what Joseph Newgarden thinks about this championship weekend. Dave First is caught up with it.
He just hopped on a scooter, ready to go back to the weigh-in, maybe talk some things over. A nice start to the weekend for you.
Yeah, it's a good start. You know, we've had a couple days here to test. Yesterday everyone had, and we had a day before that last week. So we tried to use that to our advantage, and I feel like we've had a pretty fast car up to this point. You know, we worked on more race stuff yesterday, so we're trying to get back into qual mode today. I feel like the car's pretty quick, so we just got to maintain that. You know, it's only practice, and it's a good sign, but we got to maintain that through the weekend.
When you're in a championship contention like you are here this weekend, what's it like as a driver for the first time here?
I mean, for sure, it's more pressure, and I mean, you feel more nervous about everything just because it's the championship race, but I'm trying to treat it like another weekend. You know, every weekend we show up to, we try and win the race, and that's all we're going to focus on doing, making a fast car, making good decisions, and trying to win the race. That's really all we can focus on, and that's what I'm trying to make it.
Win the race, you got the championship. You don't have to worry about what's going on behind you.
That's right. We have, you know, at least for us, the points that we're sitting in, it makes it easy. If we win the race, we win the championship, so it's an easy goal for us.
Good luck this weekend.
Thank you.
Joseph Newgarden, P1, here to start things off.
2:15 Pacific, 5:15 Eastern. That's when you can join us again here at Sonoma. The director of the Advanced Auto Parts IndyCar Radio Network is Wally Levitt. On-site engineering and production by Rick Evans. We want to thank Nick Yeoman and Dave First for all their work on pit road. We heard from Tim Cindric and Kyle Moyer and Tony Kanaan, and, of course, Gary Gerald. Our thanks to Ryan Marine and Tony DeZino for joining us in the booth. For Jake Query, this is Mark Janes. Preparations continue for Sunday's finale, the GoPro Grand Prix. So long for now from Sonoma.
IndyCar Radio on the IMS Radio Network.
A.J. Foyt down the main straightaway. The checkered flag is out. A.J.'s hand in the air. He is the winner. A.J. Foyt at Indianapolis has won his fourth 500-mile race. A.J. Foyt, our winner. The flag will fly now for Tom Sneva and then for Al Unser. We will be talking with all of these drivers in just a moment.
And we await A.J. Foyt along with a host of others, including Tony Holman, who is cheering as loudly as the crowd. We've seen what has never been seen before, beginning with a woman driving in the field in the morning, and A.J. finishing 4 up front at Indianapolis. Headed into victory lane now, A.J. Foyt in the gleaming Gilmore 14 Coyote, the Gilmore Racing Team, home, and he wins again.
And there's the checkered flag for Mark Donohue, winner of the 1972 Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Oh, my goodness, we have...
Test 1 2. Check 1 2. We want to wish a belated happy birthday to our own Chris Pollock. Chris is